The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, the group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kilauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS-HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? And it was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to you and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed, and we knew we were getting to the local community, and people were asking questions. So those were the best. I think I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well, and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha, everyone. I'm geologist Philip Ong with Mr. Dane DuPont from the nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. Today's Thursday, May 1st, 2025. Kilauea is erupting, but not putting out lava continuously at this point in the build up to episode 19. So we'll keep an eye on what's happening as we go through our broadcast today. And we'll update you guys on what's been happening over the past week on the volcano as well. How have you been, Dane? How's your past week been? Have you been
Doing good,
enjoying
yeah.
this
Stayed up kind
information?
of late last night, expecting it to go at any moment, but waited till this morning to tease us even more. So been interesting to watch it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, another week, another eruption, or another episode on the verge of, so to speak.
It slowed down just a little bit from week to week here to just give us just enough pause to catch up, and so we'll see what happens through our broadcast today, and then we'll catch up on what comes next week, I guess.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we'll kind of go through our usual steps here. Dana will be collecting questions in the chat, leading discussion there as well, and we can get going with our volcano summary. What do you think, Dane?
Yep, I think so. That's it.
All right. So, all right. Aloha, everyone. This is our Hawaiian Volcano Summary for May 1st, 2025. Kilauea is erupting intermittently from its north vent in the buildup to episode 19. Lava has been cycling up and down in this vent, spilling over from time to time, and then draining back into the vent repeatedly here. This has been happening since about noon today, and we await the onset of further activity from the volcano for episode 19 here. This is a V1 camera, live view, looking at the degassing in between one of these cycles of rising and fall. And similarly, here we have the V2. So to show you what this has looked like, we have a time lapse from the S2 camera of the glow over the past week at night. You can see the south vent was glowing first, the north vent intermittently, and getting brighter and brighter coming till today. Where the cycles have been visible, here's the V1 camera since about noon today, showing the rising of lava and dropping down through this gas pistoning process. And a different point of view from the V2 camera, with the north vent being the one with activity presently, and the south vent still glowing, but presently not overflowing. So we have had one of the longest buildups to an episode in episode 18, following an episode 17 that had very few lava fountains that were of great height. So it's uncertain exactly what will manifest for episode 19. We had in episode 15 over 100 of these gas pistoning cycles. And in episode 17, we never had the high fountains. Episode 18, we had a prolonged buildup. And so it's unclear now whether how long we'll have this cyclic fountaining activity before the onset of more vigorous activity on Kilauea here. So we have the tilt pattern for the last 3 months visible here at the summit, with our recovery since episode 18 visible in a blue line here. And what you can see is we've not yet reached this threshold of episode 18, but we have reached the previous threshold that was established during the earlier episodes back in here. So it adds a little bit extra uncertainty. And because of that, the USGS has noted that let's see here, episode 19 is likely to start sometime between now and Sunday or Monday at the latest, if the eruption goes back to the modeled behavior. If it needs to reinflate to the episode 18 maximum, the onset of a new episode may be delayed even further beyond that. So that's the current prognosis. And fortunately, if we look at our VOG forecast, we have dominant trade winds for the next several days here. So even with a low emission modeled currently, you can see that the gas is streaming to the southwest. And with any increase in gas output, as we would expect at the beginning of an eruption, along with any tephra and Pele's hairs, those should all be blown away from the nearby communities to the southwest here for the most part. Otherwise, the volcano has been fairly quiet. Seismically, there's very few earthquakes compared to some periods we've seen in the past. There is some background around the summit and the south flank and deep Pahala regions, as we've seen here recently. If we look at the long-term pattern on GPS, this is the distance north and south across the caldera. And since eruption began in December here, we've stabilized into a quasi-equilibrium here, with volcano in net not really widening or shrinking in that measurement across the entire 18 episodes. Although in between each one, you can see that the volcano does contract and then extends again, contracts and extends repeatedly, following the same pattern of the tilt we just showed. This is Kilauea summit. On the rift, we continue to see contraction of the Middle East rift zone near Pu'u'o. So there is nothing to worry about in the Lower East Rift for now. This activity is all contained within the summit and a national park as well. Here's a map of exactly where that's located. This is the most recent release from April 30th, with our eruptive vents in the southwest part of Kīlauea Pele, the main summit caldera. That means all the lava erupted is stuck within this pit, except whatever is caught in the wind and can blow out of here, which there's been a little bit of that tephra. So here's a entire footprint of the 2024 to 2025 episodic fountaing eruptions through here. And they have calculated a new total lava volume of 23 billion gallons, or 87.5 million cubic meters. This includes a maximum lava thickness of 194 feet, almost 200 feet, almost 60 meters here. This is through episode 18 here. So that means that now presently, this makes this current eruption the second largest volume after the one in September 2021. That one lasted 444 days, and we are, at least this map and volume was taken 122 days into this eruption. So we're erupting at a much faster pace on average, as you can see here, especially when we consider that each episode is only a fraction of a day usually. This is episode 18 here. Although when you consider that the pauses occur between episodes, each episode averages about a week. Still, you imagine 18 of these, about 5 million cubic meter episodes adds up to 87.5 million cubic meters, or 23 billion gallons. And I found this most easily seen in this time lapse from the B1 camera. This is taking one image at noon every day from the beginning of December. And our eruption site is back here in the southwest. And what you can see is the downdrop block being covered by these flows, which are onlapping and extending further and further into this pit. And at the level of the crater floor also rising and being reshaped by these flows and injection of lava from below. That's the B1 camera there. On Mauna Loa, we continue to have very few earthquakes, with the USGS saying in their most recent update issued today that everything is within the expected post-eruption phase of the volcano, including lower than average seismicity over the last month with 76 small earthquakes. That puts it still here in earthquakes per month in this very low range. That's been typical for well over a year now, following the initial recovery from the 2022 eruption. And the GPS station at the summit that shows a vertical component going up is still showing that rise with some variations, but overall still rising, showing that the volcano is swelling, refilling with magma, recharging after that eruption. And that's our Hawaiian Volcano summary for this week. So with that said, let's talk about the volcanic hazards a little bit more here and show you guys some of the gas. This is the S2 camera, just the daytime views showing the gas. Normally the trade winds blow it away from people that way. When it switches in this direction is when it starts going towards the park overlooks. So you can see that's been happening a couple of times here, intermittently, sometimes towards the camera as well. So some variable winds, but overall, in the most recent days, today especially, pretty strongly to the southwest. And the forecast for the next week continues that, actually a little windier than usual. And as we enter May here, perhaps we are entering as well our dominant trade wind pattern. So that is the norm here in our summer months, to have usually the trade winds in place. And hopefully that limits the impact moving forward in the short term as well. The K2 camera at the Kilauea rim at Uekahuna overlook on the tower here. Let's play that one, daytime views as well. So at the end of the last eruption, the gas was blowing towards the camera. And then here you see it blowing more away back over Ka'u Desert, over the Kamakaya Hills in the background there. And when it blows more in that direction is when it's going towards overlooks and towards people, or when it's flooding the camera view itself too. So here you can see, for the most part, it's been pretty steady blowing off in that direction, which is good. And it's nice to have those other views. We'll, for completeness, include this camera on the side of Mauna Loa, the KP camera. And Kilauea is down in this pit, so you can see sometimes these extra high clouds from the heat, the thermals, a little bit of gas there, and usually this stuff is blowing southwest in that direction. What you can see is a lot of weather has come through in the past week, a lot of rain. Otherwise, when the weather is clear and you can see it, is blowing southwest there. So turning to the VOG measurement and prediction project out of Manoa, the VOG forecast dashboard, as we showed you before, SO2 looks like that. If we put SO4, that adds a little bit more dimension here to the particulates that accumulate further from the vent. There is a little bit more impact you can see here on the Kona side as well. As we said before, this is taking in emission rate of 1,500 tons per day, which has been about the average in these inter-episode times, the times between the episodes. You know, when an episode starts, it puts out a giant emission of gas, which it can exceed tens of thousands of tons. But in between here, 1,500 tons per day is what's put into this model. So if we get to a higher value, then you'd expect to see a lot more yellow and red, but following the same patterns in this direction, and probably somewhat onto here as well. Right. So since we are in this period that's pre the gas, we can compare this to what we maybe see next week and what we saw last week and some other weeks. Here is the state of Hawaii air quality data. And everything is in the green, from Kauai to Oahu to Maui to all of Hawaii, Big Island of Hawaii here. And we look at purple air for a little bit more density, and we maybe can see that there are a couple of spots that do report a little bit higher than usual readings here in the middle South Kona coast and north of Volcano as well. Unclear if that's volcanic or if that's something else. Both of them are within a range. This one within a range of the source, just a little bit of variable wind can get to that sensor, it seems like. Back there at Kulani, I believe, is where this is. Right there. I gotta see it right here. Yeah. And then the ones over here on the Kona side can get caught on this onshore-offshore wind as a VOG gets caught on the flank of Mauna Loa, which has this big ridge, just like a fin over here on a corner of the island. So once the VOG gets around that, it often gets caught in that area. And as we saw from our forecasts, that's not unreasonable to see some higher readings there as well. The closest sites are in a national park, and here is their chart of their sensors, everything in the green presently, and their wind direction trailing narrowly to the southwest, as their reading is currently 12 miles an hour, 5 meters per second there. So it's decently steady from the north there. And looking at the charts back in time, everything is in the green here at all the stations, looking back in time there. All right, so a couple more things. We can look at windy. This is telling us the overall weather pattern as well. So you can see that trade wind pattern of the winds coming across there as well. And also note that there is this remnant patch of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere above us from all the recent episodes as well. So right now it's mostly in this orange, that's lighter orange, a little bit of a darker right in here, but we can expect to see some red once that new puff emits, whenever that may be. So looking at the Mounts project, the history of what we have scanned thus far, the scan from yesterday is pretty clear. No real SO2 emission there. We go back, let's see here, 28th, there's a little bit more. That low level is in the gray there. 27th, similarly, 26th, 25th, there's a little bit more of that south wind blowing things to the north at low levels. And then here at 23rd and 22nd, 22nd was our last episode. That was a big blast. That's what that looked like. There is a little bit of afterwards and coming back forward in time to where we are now. So we're still awaiting that big emission of gas, and thankfully the weather looks favorable coming up here. So that's our hazard summary. Let's do another quick peek back into our live camera. And there's our V2 camera. You can see the lava's coming back up, little trickles oozing off the side there. So I'll just keep checking in between our segments here, but let's move on to our recent earthquakes. So here is our most recent map. Oh, it's reset for me, so let me reset it for you guys. Let's zoom it out so we can see everything, and it's going to show us a lot of stuff, including the earthquakes. Let's take off all the instruments here. I myself like to change the background layer as well, and to take off the recent flows so we can see into the crater where those events might occur. So all right, there's our earthquake map. This is likely the last, oh, this is probably the wrong date range, so let's update the date range to the full last 2 weeks here. And there it is. In case you weren't sure how that navigates, there you get a little bit of instruction there. So there's the last week. On this map, what stands out the most is these three events over here down by the formerly known as Loihi, Kamaehua Kanaloa volcano. And so there's a magnitude 3, 3.2, and 3.8 there, all on the 26th here, 4:20 a.m., the 3.8, and you might consider these other ones aftershocks, 7:45 a.m., 11:15 a.m. there on the flank, and that's all we know. It's some adjustment happening. We've seen this blue population here indicate that deep hotspot source from Pahala, under Pahala there. And we believe that that hotspot source then splits into branches that go towards Kilauea and Mauna Loa and Kamaehua Kanaloa. So we think magma is still feeding the volcano. So we do at some point expect adjustments to be ongoing there. And maybe now would be a good time to go back to our, let's see if we have, that helps at all. No, it doesn't help us at all there. To show us some of that bathymetry topography underwater, but it's pretty faint on there. So it looks like it might be that southern arm of the rift zone there, southern rift zone. Hard to tell though. So elsewhere on an island, Mauna Loa shows a few minor adjustments here on both flanks. Nothing major. There's just 1, 2.5 in the shallow Pahala region, which is more Mauna Loa's flank moving as opposed to these blue ones being magma rising from below. This one might fall in that same category there too, in that in-between zone near the southwest rift of Kilauea. And otherwise, let's zoom into Kilauea here, and we do see a few more of these events, largest of which is a magnitude 2 there, 0.7 miles down, occurred a couple of days ago. Big gap and real absence of any events on the rift zone itself, either the southeast rift or the southwest rift. And you do see a few of these south flank events, as this is something that we expect to continue to move. And really, it might be moving slower than usual with that few number of events visible today. So overall, pretty slim on the earthquakes. There's an extra settling event here in Mauna Kea, 2.9. Nothing unusual there. And so looking at this again through this lens of largest events, the 3.8 down at Kamaehua Kanaloa, 3.2 were the two largest. 3.1 at Pahala was the next one. and then a 3.0 back makes the 4th of the list there. Everything else was under magnitude 3 for the week. Same distribution there. So let's take another peek here and then move on. So the flow came up, and it left another little veneer and layer, and now it's back down again. All right, let's go move on to our monitoring signals. So we'll start back on Monday, the 28th, when we note weak spatter observed from the north vent just before 6:50 p.m. on the previous evening. So actually the 27th on Sunday night. We had seen glow before, but this was the first time the spatter was visible from the camera, and it has kept spattering until the activity we saw today, actually, there. Let's move on from that one to the update from yesterday on Wednesday. At that point, they are noting spattering, and also on a previous update, occasional flaming from the north vent, along with a tiny pool of lava within the south vent. Right, so this flaming is actually linked in this article here back to this volcano watch from March of 2000, which refer to those flames from the vents as hydrogen gas burning. And it talks about, this article goes into talk about how different situations, you can have really hot lava actually igniting lower concentrations of hydrogen gas, or you could have closer to the ocean some interaction of the water from the ocean to increase hydrogen to where you can have extra flames by the ocean as well. So lava flows by themselves don't emit flames. It's more about the broad surfaces allowing gas to disperse quickly, and then having hot enough temperatures to ignite those levels of gas, right? So that's what they're referring to there. That was visible in the last few days here, this occasional flaming along with a spattering from the vents. So we'll move forward to the one from this update from this morning, where they're noting that episode 19 is likely to start between now and Sunday or Monday, depending on when inflation of the summit resumes. The inflation has resumed already, and we're seeing these overflows and variation within that. So most recently, strong glow visible last night from both vents, along with spattering and flaming from the north vent. They note that they measured the SO2 rate on April 30th at 1,350 tons per day. So in that same range of 1,500 we mentioned before. That's what's typical and average of the pauses or the times between episodes here. In their analysis here, we can see a little bit more of their detail and rationale. The pattern of inflation and deflation changed during episodes 17 and 18, and that makes determining the window for the start of episode 19 fountaing more difficult. Their calculations assume the inflation pattern has returned to the long-term modeled level, which they note here is several microradians less than a peak inflation of episode 18, right? So when we looked at our graph, we saw that episode 18 peaked a little bit higher. If it needs to get to that level, then it's going to take a little longer. But if they're going back to the previous threshold that was in play before this variation seen in episodes 17 and 18, then the time is close to now and as late as Sunday or Monday, right? And possibly longer beyond that. So that's the language being used in the update here, which is what how they're trying to communicate this nuance to us. So that's one way to get the updates, is these daily updates here. We've also noted that if you go on the website, they actually have here under this homepage, they've had this box with all the links to the monitoring and webcams and all that. Now they have these messages popping up here as well. right? So you can actually flip through these messages and see they're popping up on here. So you can click on the view all messages and it'll show you close to all the messages. You see here, this one's going through April 30th. If I go back, this one's actually May 1st, right? So not quite sure what's going on there. We have seen that on Twitter or X, right? Call it, or whatever comes to mind. That's what came to mind here. They are putting out these updates as well, these messages, and showing the pattern of the cycles going on here. So let me kind of scroll down here. They actually started off noting that at 11:49 a.m. today, weak spattering transitioned to 15 to 30 foot high dome fountains. Continued fountains filled the vent with lava by 11:59 a.m. Lava did not overflow during this first cycle. Just afternoon lava drained back into the vent. Then a note, shortly afterwards, the pond on the north vent began refilling at 12:15. It was overflowing the rim by 12:20. That's the first overflow of lava from the vent there. Dome fountains are 5 to 10 feet high and flows are reaching the bottom of the cone. South vent remains inactive. So interestingly, we've noted in the past that it seemed that the USGS was using overflow of the vents as their criteria to mark the start of an episode. We are seeing overflows now, and they did not call it this time. Perhaps this is because you look at episode 18, and it actually had overflows that occurred over the course of one day. Then you had a couple of day gap, and you had more overflows, and another gap, and then you had the actual main phase beginning. So maybe they're hedging a little bit against that. In any case, if it's not officially been called to begin, it's still called intermittent activity with overflows, right? So south vent still inactive, dome fountains 5 to 10 feet high, sometimes 15 to 20 feet high. That's the range of it there. So they note the third episode there, 12:38 to 12:45. The fourth one, or actually, this is 12:38 to 12:50. And that's kind of 2 and 1 there. There is an image from Volcano Watch we'll talk about in a little bit. Cycle 4, cycle 5, 6, 7, 8. You see there, and after a while, they get tired of writing all these little updates. And so they note the cycles may continue as precursory behavior to the episode 19 main fountaining. So it seems a little ambiguous still how they're defining the episodes. But this is useful to know. Each cycle so far has lasted about 12 minutes, overflowing the cone rim for about 6 minutes, with 9 minutes of time between each, right? So 9 minutes plus 12 minutes, that's about 21 minutes there of cycle of it rising and falling in event. So let me just put this back up here and take a drink. Right there, so yeah, there's a small little dome fountain in there, not overflowing, rising the level.
Yeah, pretty cool in there. The little baby dome, right? And how fast they're fluctuating.
Yeah, thanks, Dane.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's going on. We're still waiting to see, but if you come to the main eruption information page now from USGS, you can note that there is this additional past 3 month graph on here. There you can see that overall pattern of the episodes. And here 17, a little bit shorter normal, 18 a little higher normal, and with this extra long ramp up. Right? Same rate, but just took a little longer than the previous ones had been taken here. So the threshold they're talking about is this one back in here, that one, slightly lower than the one we saw for 18 right there. So in their timeline, they still have this ambiguous notation down here in 18, and 19 is not listed. So that's where we currently stand today, as the eruption is still ramping back up. And speaking of ramping up, let's move this back on here. See that little dome a little bit taller there.
Growing.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, it's the king of pump. I've said this before, you know, the master of pump fakes. Like it really knows how to make you think it's about to go, but this ain't it. And then he does it again and again.
So I thought I would update these graphs here, and what I've done is just shown one of each. Here's our maximum fountain height. We're waiting to see what 19 is going to bring. Same with 19 over here. But what you can see is that we had this in orange section, long pre-fountain lava flow duration, longer than anything else that we'd seen prior, and that was in part because they called the episode started when they had the first overflows. Right, and so depending on how you look at it, you could cut it a little differently, and this value can go down, but that does increase the pause following episode 17. So this bottom right here is showing the pauses. Presently, if we were to count this activity today, our pause in blue is as such, and then if we wait and call us after some further period of time, then we'll have to see this growing higher and higher up as well. Right, so. In any case, what you can see is that there seems to be a little bit of an extended timeline, a period here in the last couple episodes, along with this change that we saw following the high fountains of 15 and 16. So that's something to keep an eye out for, and to be curious about scientifically as we watch what happens with the eruption next here. And man, I feel like I need to keep flipping back because it's getting a little higher again and starting to spill over.
Yeah, I mean, it's an action-packed live stream. Every time I look back at it, it's either growing or it suddenly has turned off and is draining back. We're getting ready to do the next little bit again.
Wow. All right, let's kind of try to keep it moving here. Let's look at some of the other signals that we have. So let me make sure this is as current as possible since it's dynamic. So here's the date line for May 1st. And here is that flat period of tilt that was referred to in the update today. And since the indices pick back up, right, we do have this little bit of a variation that occurs. Actually, most of these night times are flatter than the daytimes, as you can see here. So there's a little bit of that natural variation in there. But there's also, looks like maybe an extra slowdown going on there. So in any case, that is feeling that pull right now, that upward pull. And that is where we are in the cycle. I'm just waiting for anything else to show up on the graph. Once this thing starts dropping, that's usually a sign that the big pulse has started and the lava is going to be fountaining higher out. So here's earthquake counts for the last week. Pretty normal within this range of 30 to 50, even a little bit lower some days here. Pretty sparse on our depth versus time plot, so let's just move on past that. Earthquake maps, we've covered that a little bit already there, so there's the same pattern for the last week with those extra small earthquakes plotted by the USGS. It shows us that same pattern there. So moving on, here is the last month of tilt at the summit in blue and a rift zone in green. The rift zone has been just contracting. Few little variations from weather phenomena. And so there we have is kind of zoomed in this shorter peak of episode 17, longer buildup of 18, and then here's our buildup to 19. Right. So if we had to go all the way up to this point right there, and we're coming up at about a microradian per day here, then that might take another day or two beyond where we are presently here, right? So that's an interesting question. If you look at this one, we actually had, I think it was the first overflows were about 5 days, a little more than 5 days before the onset of the main fountaining phase there. And so that was the 22nd. It was somewhere right in here that you had the overflows, and then it kept inflating for 5 days beyond that before it fountained. So that's the far end of your range, I would say, is, okay, we seeing it do a similar thing now. were to follow a similar pattern, might it go as long as another 5 days? That might be the far end of it. And the other point of view would be that when we've seen these flattenings of the tilt and an overflows beginning in the past, especially in earlier episodes, that was usually the indication that in short order we're going to be coming up to the main fountain phase. So we'll see what comes next, because we can only watch and see at this point. So there's a sandhill tilt meter showing a similar pattern, and it's anyone's guess here. And this one looks like it's rising, and this one looks like it might be falling on a 3-month tilt, which we'll show you in a minute here. Earthquakes per day, there is that 30 to 50 range. Looks like maybe slightly higher in the last 2 weeks than the first 2 weeks of this previous month here. And if you look in here, then you can kind of see this in this concentration in a shallower band right in there, whereas you have this periodicity and randomness in a deeper zone as well. So those look like there's a little bit more there for the last month. And then here's our 3-month tilt. And so when I said that the peaks were decreasing, here's what I mean, right? You can see that overall there's been this, I'm just trying to connect the tops of the peaks, and maybe I'll split through those three, something like that. That line is gradually decreasing and maybe flattening out here, right? So here, and that's really the question, is where are we going with this? Is this threshold down lower? And in that case, episode 18 took a little longer, even in that sense as well, to event out its main fountain phase. So that's our real big question mark here to the right. All right, so I see a little change in activity. Let's peek in again. There, looks like the draining is starting to begin there. See lava flowing back into the hole, and the gas still coming out and sputtering out the lava that's draining back in there, and the lava level dropping here on the rim. So there is our cycle continuing.
I feel like they're faster than 20 minutes at this point, but I haven't been
tracking. It might be. Maybe
yeah.
It may be shortening. Yeah, it may be shortening. I went and looked at episode 15 write-up, and they mentioned on that one had over 100 of these gas pistoning cycles in the buildup to that fountain. That was that first 1,000-foot fountain, and those 100 cycles occurred over about 22 hours. So they're pretty fast and furious at that one. That was before this change up we've been getting recently with these newer episodes. So there's some more context, and everyone can take their best guess of what pattern it might fit next, and just have that little extra context of the patterns from before. So, okay, where am I here? 3-month tilt. There's the 1-year earthquake counts, earthquakes per week, still very low since the eruption onset in December. And our GPS in that quasi-equilibrium there, right? And one thing I note is these last couple episodes have had this broader range, right? See this one, especially because of that extended time, really moved quite a bit, right? That's about, if you look at that span vertically from bottom to top, it's about the same as one of these intervals between the dotted lines. And come to the side, you see that's 0.1 meters, 10 centimeters, that the volcano is stretching out in between one episode before it relaxes for the next one. That was before episode 18 there. So you can see based on this, it looks like we are at a threshold extension-wise. So we'll see exactly what happens there. And over in the rift zone, still some variation within there, but overall trending downwards ever since this eruption began here in mid-December, right? That's really when this downward trend begins when you look at this. Prior to that, if we go back to here, it was downward trend up until August 2024. And that's when we had that furthest east intrusion. The first intrusions were back in July, but in August, intrusions furthest east under Nepal crater towards Pu'ul. Lava gets all the way under Pu'ul, and we're close enough to widen the rift zone under Pu'ul, where it stretches out that extra distance. And here's how close together they were before, and here's how close together they were afterwards. It got bigger. And then after that, we had the eruption in September in Nepal, and then the level dropped down here. And really, since then, it's been climbing back up until this eruption in December. And then we have this turnaround where in an interval magma had been refilling that Middle East rift zone. We were looking at that as maybe the next move of Kilauea, and then we were surprised by the summit onset and continued activity there. And since then, the rift zone has been essentially shut off and contracting, and that's an interesting thing to note there. So it has been in play recently, but since this eruption began, it's really been to the detriment of the East Rift expansion here. So, all right, that's all of our GPS earthquake counts per month. You can see similar pattern low following the December onset. And for the 5 years, you can see here, here's our quasi-equilibrium now, and you can see how rare that is. Over the past 5 years, we've had overall mostly this extending pattern, right? And there at Pool, mostly an extensional pattern. Contractional pattern or Clarkson Middle East Rift, apart from that little intrusion, and then back to that recently here. So from the map, I showed you one of these snapshots before, but let's talk through this a little bit more. 122 days versus 447 days. And this is our second largest volume now, post 2018. As you can see that in a little bit more time, 153 days, our very first eruption back in December 2020 to May 2021 put out lava at a much slower rate, right? Because it didn't accumulate nearly as much total in longer time. Right? So this one has a higher total, but look at the amount of time it took, over a year. So we're well on pace to exceed that. So you can see that we'll see how long this actually lasts, but it may well take the record pretty quickly if we keep going at this rate. In comparison, these other summit eruptions, which were 2 months and 2 weeks and 1 week, we're getting faster output, right? You can see this output in 6 days more than you had in 12 or 61 days. So it was getting to that point where that pathway seemed to be further open. Then we had Southwest Rift, Southeast Rift before we come back to the summit here. It's interesting to see how that pattern has evolved. And to look at that a different way, now I'm changing it to our effusion rate. So rather than the actual amount of time, let's just calculate it out. So that one turns out to be right around 3, similar to that one as well, similar to that one. And then you see the rates going up here to 15, to 35. And then the Southwest Rift around 15, but much shorter. Southeast Rift around 7, also shorter. And we are here at 8.3. But this, importantly, is averaging the time between episodes, between fountaning events as well. So all that dead time in between is also counted in there. So I thought I would add a couple more columns over here. We have from episode 18, a report that during the episode, lava was coming out on an average of 140 cubic meters per second. So that's the real rate during that short time. This was erupting for 10 hours, right? But if you average out the time in between it, then that's how you get to your 8.3 for the long term there, right? So seen a different way here. Let's switch this back to the time once again. There's how long this takes in time, 0.4 days. And our average episode, if we have 18 over 122 days, is 6.8 there. Right, so interesting to note that pattern there, time and volume, and how we're really growing and really expanding much further to the east here, right? So if you zoom in, you can see there's only a couple of these little purple dots that are the September of 2023 summit eruption remnants. Down in here, there's a very, very small, hard to even see pixel. This is all that's left of the June 2023 eruption. This is all being drowned by lava. And we have some good views of the B1 camera that we kind of flashed up at our summary that we'll look at in more detail here coming up. But first, we'll take a break and pass it to Lou and Dayton for our community corner.
All right. Well, thank you, Phil. We'll go ahead and get Lou in here as the ASL team switches out as well. How you doing, Lou?
Hey, I'm good. The goalpost is moving again on us. We have not figured out yet if it's the doming, if it's the splashing, the splooshing, tilt. Incredible. And Phil was just saying, what do we have about from episode 15? About 100 of these to go through, maybe. It's you and I, man.
We'll see how late we last tonight. But yeah. What do you have for us in the community corner?
And let's take a look and see what's going on today. All right, up at the park here, I got a pretty cool picture from Yvonne. Let's make sure that gets in there.
Yep.
There we go. All right. I got a pretty cool picture from Yvonne. This is Waikahuna in the old Jagger Museum area that's not yet open. This is all the tephra from the last episode that was up there on the ground. So thanks for sharing that, Yvonne. As you're going in the park, know that there's construction going on all the time. This is at the entrance. It could be there. It might not be. Just go slow. And the last time I was in the park, there was a sign as you drove up. It said, stay to the right. That meant that they were going to collect your monies, your card, from the right side of your vehicle, not the driver's side. So pay attention to that. And that's a shot of the old Kilauea Visitor Center that they are remodeling that is closed. If you need to go there, I'm going to show you how to get to the new location. If you look up on the top right, it says Kilauea Military Camp. That's where you're headed because currently this is the view of the old Kilauea Visitor Center. As you drive through, you're going to see this here. You won't be able to turn in some places in the park. They've closed off some areas and there are detours. So don't try. I watched the guy try to pull in through here and go back out the main entrance. They're not going to let you do that. You're going to have to go around. Take a look. There's your sign you're looking for. If you're looking for the new visitor center, which is called the Kilauea Welcome Center. And it's going to be off on your right-hand side here at KMC or Kilauea Military Camp. These cones are there for a reason. Don't park there. This is a great spot because the KMC is right across from the caldera and it's an easy walk. But I'm going to show you where they would like you to park. Right there in the ball field, which is directly behind the new HVO facility that they're working on. And you can walk over to the Welcome Center right there. Dane, you haven't been in there since they've opened up, have you?
No, I haven't. I know the building, though, quite well.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen it, redone and probably a lot fuller than it used to be.
Oh, it is, yeah. But they did a good job. Rangers are in there to answer questions. It was hopping when I walked in there. And no, bring your own water. There's the water station at Kilauea Visitor Center is unavailable during the renovation closure. A bottle filling station will be reinstalled at Waikahuna once it reopens in the weeks ahead. In the meantime, water is available for purchase at Volcano House, which there are store hours. I don't know if they're selling water behind the counter after those gift store, the restaurant and the gift store closes. So get there earlier. Just pack your own, especially if you have pets. There are the viewing areas. They are everywhere from the Kilauea Overlook down. You just know that they may close off the Kilauea Overlook and Waikahuna because of the tephra that we've seen in the last few episodes. But Steaming Bluff right there, the Volcano House, all the way around the park to Keanakekoi, all good. All very good viewing. Life on the Edge is one of the programs that's going on up there. As a matter of fact, it's the only one that's going on because of the renovations. Happens at 10, 11, 1, and 2 p.m., 30 minutes. Check into the Kilauea Welcome Center for more information on that. And we have the Mauna Kea Observatory's Astro Day at the Prince Kuhio Plaza. Are we going to this, Dane? Are we signed up? Come on.
Oh, I have before. Yeah.
They're pretty cool.
But
Explore,
discover. There's a lot going on May 3rd.
Right.
With it being the eruption anniversary from 2018.
Right. Well, It is the 23rd year of this, so we'll catch it on the next solar cycle, shall we? So May 3rd from 10 to 4 at the Prince Kahuyo Plaza in Hilo. It's a free Ohana family-friendly event hosted by Mauna Kea Observatories with support from local schools, nonprofits, and science partners. And this weekend is one of 2 events going on presented by Haka and us, as well as us. We are collaborating together, and we say, are you ready? Who will be there when disaster strikes? It is a disaster preparedness series that we got going on. And Dane, you're speaking. Philip speaking. We have other professionals here on the island that are going to be there. It's at Maku Market, May 4th and the 18th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Pahoa. Check it out. There's a $2 fee to get into the Maku'u market, but it's going to be worth it. You want to come down, you can take pictures with Dane. I will make sure that I'll be there for that. We are going to be live streaming this on several different platforms for Haka, so you can check it out on YouTube, Facebook, and around. Watch for us to make a post on that, so check back and don't miss it. If you can't go down to watch it live, definitely catch it online. And Imiloa has this pretty awesome event, and I think this weekend is the last one, May 4th. It's Journey into Earth's Prehistoric Oceans. My grandson is just loves dinosaurs and the ocean, so this would be something I would bring my kid to. They do a fantastic job. Expedition Dinosaur into the Deep, an immersive exhibit of marine reptiles, dinosaurs, and the ecosystems that shaped our planet. Check out their hours. It's downtown, the University of Hawaii at Hilo, the Imiloa Astronomy Center. And the Tsunami Museum, we just finished up. April was Tsunami Awareness Month, and they are running weekend hours from 10 to 2. Still open there. Go check them out. Get some education. And if you have not signed up for our HVERI Eruption email, please do so. It's hveri.org/subscribe, and we will put you on our email list for our newsletters. As well, you will get put on for our volcano eruption notification. Stay informed. And it's coming up at the end of the month, and it's a good time. There's the QR code, Dane's favorite on the computer. That's why I always put it up here. Yeah, scan that. You can get subscribed to our newsletter that will be coming out shortly for the month of May. And with that, Dane, take us home.
There is one more thing. I'll go ahead and do this, but I believe Phil has it lined up, so I will bring that over if that's cool.
Go for it.
Real quick, then I'll bring you back on, or bring that back on. All right. So yeah, happening this Saturday as well in Pahoa. We have the Mikiki, and it's a 2-part event, really. It starts at the cultural component starts at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., but I believe there's a part of it that goes later into the evening as well, the Activate Puna block party, so to speak. And that's 4:30 to 10. So that's the concert, music, food vendors. The beginning's going to be cultural practitioners, and we have a bunch of friends that are going to be in attendance there. So encourage you to go check that one out. And then I will bring back to over here and thank all of our supporters. We rely on viewers like you, but we also rely on grants through the Kilauea Recovery, the Bye Grant program, and facilitated by Kilauea Eruption team, the Hawaii Community Foundation. And they make it so this program, as well as our other programs in digital resilience and youth development, have the funding and support that they need. So we appreciate them. We also had some donations come through that I want to shout out. Find it. All right, we had Dawn with a $10 super chat with a happy birthday, Brett, and happy pizza day. And then Brett came through with a 501 super chat for May Day. Happy Lay Day. And then Lori with a $4.99 super sticker. Appreciate all the support there. And I believe we also had one from on the website, hveri.org/donate. We had a donation from Scott J. Ed. So appreciate that there. 5234. All right. So thank you, everybody. And I
got one more.
One more. What am I missing?
We got one more. We got a $21.12 donation from Lisa Alwyn on our donation page at hveri.org/donate.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Lou. I'll go ahead and bring Phil back in here, and
Right on.
we will continue on. And welcome back, Phil.
All right.
So yeah, get into the home stretch.
Yeah, so there's our live stream once again. Lava's back up. Refilled the pit and it's overflowing. There's the V1 angle, and here is the V2 angle. Let's see that a little bit better. So yeah, we'll just wrap it up here with a series of observations. We can start off just by showing once again this time lapse of the glow from the south vent first, and then the north vent joining in. This is a past week, so following the end of the last episode. See the north vent a little more intermittent, but also the one that gets brighter here, and currently the only one that's overflowing. So that's interesting as well. From the V1 camera, we have a similar view from the last week. Here we're actually looking at that last remnant of the last flow from episode 18. And there is our north vent and south vent in the back. I'm sorry, north vent here and south vent, and some occasional little cone collapses and other spots of glow as well. So just some nighttime views there. You can see how the glow is intensified. Spatter picking up here within the last couple of days. It's hard to really see the flaming captured in these images. It's maybe something like that, right in there. That's what we have from the V1 camera. So looking at the past 24 hours, there is a spattering overnight, intense and glow, a little bit of the flaming as well. Coming into daybreak, and then coming with the first rise of lava, overflows, and where we currently sit. So the V2, just from this morning, there's overflows and repeated pistoning cycles, looped a couple of times here, so you can see how that looks. North vent only, south vent still inactive, just degassing. So move on to the B1 camera here. So start off with this view. So let's do this one, right? This is just the last week or so. I'm sorry, actually, this is the last month, from April 1st to May 1st, looking at the changes in the caldera floor. So I know this is fast and a kind of wide angle, but a few things to look at. Let's zoom in to start back here on the vents, right? So you can see within a 1 month period, vents stay like they're pretty much in the same place right in there. They actually rise a little bit if you look really closely. It goes from about there to about there as far as a vent actually rising and growing a little bit and being lifted up. Pan it over here. This is the ridge on which the B1 camera was. You can see this onlapping, how much the lava has encroached onto this southern border all around here. And the crater floor raises elsewhere as well, but it's hard to pick it out quite as easily as where it's covering new ground, all the way to the edge of this dark spot right here. Maybe a big crack. And then if I pan it over here to this front edge, it's almost like the lapping of a wave on a beach, right? You can see the actual edge of the lava flow has been advancing over uncovered ground over this past month as well, all across there. Right? It's clearly having to go around the high spots, and those are largely the September 2023 eruption sites. So this is really interesting to look at closely here. If you look at these last couple cones that are sticking above, this one right in here, you can see in the back there, this black spot right in there. I'll wait for my cursor to fade there. It actually goes from bigger to smaller. It's like a mouth opening and closing there, the way it's looped around. Right, so part of this stuff, like this part of the cone right in here, is getting drowned by the lava. And other parts of it, like right in here, this piece of the cone, is actually had this lava inject underneath it, and it's being lifted upwards. And it's just like when we have pieces of the cone at the other end of the lava lake falling on an island and getting carried along and floating. We're seeing the September 2023 cones getting picked up by this flow over here. And this is not the only one. Look at the one over here to the side. This one's clearly rising. It's like it's bobbing up with the flow as lava is injecting from below. Right? So that's really fascinating to see there. And it's just a 1 month period, as we said before. Looking in the middle, you can see that there are parts of the crater floor, this big distinctive flow that's darker right in there. It's not changing shape at all. It's just rising as a unit, right? That's lava injecting from below. This is not as good a view as we had in our B2 camera, the one melted by lava last week. But you can see this if you look closely. And this is what we'll have to do until we have something back online. So that same B1 camera, let me pull it back now to, this is from back on December 1st through the whole eruption. So we can look at the similar patterns all through there, since we're just looking at this edge over here. Let's zoom it into that. Like that first flood of lava in that first episode got pretty far, all the way to there. But you can see since then, that whole pancake's been lifting upwards and spreading out further towards the right here. And actually there you can see the shapes of the original cones from the September 2023 eruption site. You can see how most of them have been buried. Right? This one right here with this hole, right? That crater mouth completely gone. And there is that mouth that we saw was closing at the end here, as some lower part of the cone is getting picked up and getting put in front of that hole. So it's getting obscured from the camera view here, right? But some of these other ones there and there, these have all disappeared as well. Even those ones are disappearing. And this one right here, you can note, right? There's where the top of it is at the start. You can clearly see it's risen there by the end of that loop. Yeah, it gets all the way up to there. So pretty fascinating stuff to see in this animation there. Some of this is happening quickly through these flows that come and pave over the land, but there's also this injection and ooze-ups happening in this area quite a bit as well. And so you can see back to the center of the view here, flows, and then this injection, right? And how this spot right here seems to favor flows. It's just the right distance away from the vent. Several of these dark flows, and they can be seen to rise right through there. You see our onlapping onto this ledge that has the B1 camera, maybe some more in there. And let's come back to the vent area where we'll catch a few of these fountain views. But now you can really see the filling of the crater much more clearly. Look at how our original crater level is way down there. And our vents are basically right in there. And now at the end of the animation, they're all the way up here. Maybe not quite that high, maybe right in there. And so you can see that they're actually rising upwards as well, which is making it easier for the lava to escape the crater wall, right? So really can see that there, how much of that crater wall has been buried. And that's likely where the lava is the thickest. That's the closest to 200 feet or 60-meter area of the measurement, likely right back in there. And you can see it visually pretty clearly too. So that's the B1 camera. A little bit. That's their little bonus animation for you guys today, and it's a little bit of baseline for what we can look at from this camera for changing views in the future. So we do have a couple USGS photo releases that we can share as well. Let me take a quick peek back in here. Oh, we're in between again. So let's just note April 25th and 26th, eruption pause, series of images here. They noted back then, looking down, this is the north vent. They could see a little bit of lava through the fume, even during this time between the episodes. Then north vent's covered in fume here. This is a south vent, and there's that little spot of lava in there as well. And from a different angle, patch of sulfur there coming out. You can see how it's leaking from the crack and depositing there too, same here. But there's our little spot of lava or glow visible down through the fume. This is the south vent. They're noting how much tephra is falling on this downwind side, up to 2 yards or 2 meters in this area. But because the USGS is still using this crater rim drive and driving back and forth along it, you can still see the impression of the road still in there. But if you zoom it way in, they note that this little white speck right here, that's the top of that southwest rift zone informational sign that used to be at the pullout next to this road before everything was buried in all this tephra. So changing landscape there, and you can see some of these big cracks still not full of tephra. They can take quite a lot of material in there. So here's another view looking at that western part of Hale-Ma'uma'u. There's our cones. You can see there's actually a little bit of another spot back in here that sometimes might leak out some lava, and is definitely leaking out gas as well. That could be one of these secondary to the south vent exit points here. But tephra built up, slope against the wall, and that slope there. And there's our big flows. You can see other spots of degassing and fuming concentrated here and here. I feel like this area in here might have been where we had that old west vent pond, which was a persistent source of degassing. And I feel like this spot over here might be where we had our island. That was also another spot of degassing persistently as well. It's hard to tell because all that stuff is now buried under this new blanket of lava from our 18 episodes thus far. Here on the left side of the image, you can see that piece of crater rim drive that collapsed in 2018, partially into the crater on that sliver of ground, and the Hale-Ma'uma'u overlook would have been somewhere down in the rubble down in here. There's another piece of the road there and there as well, right? So you can see the road came in this way and then came in that way, and the parking lot would have been like something like that with a bunch of parking. And give you some orientation there. All right, a little further view. Here's our down drop block. There's the upper caldera rim there and there. And then here's the inner 2018 collapse rim and that onlapping edge reverse angle there. So there's our vents and the southwest rift, Kamakaya Hills in the background as well. And from above, since they're flying around during a pause, they snapped this image of Kilauea Iki. Kilauea Iki, one of the most popular hiking trails in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. There is that trail cutting across the bottom of the crater here as well. People like to often come back up along the rim that way and then loop back down in. And there's your loop right there with the lava tube being back in here as part of that as well. But you can see here this big fallout zone. This is the tephra hill of Pu'upua'i, which was the fallout of the 18 episodes of high fountaing of Kilauea Iki back in 1959. So in that case, it was a smaller pond there. It filled that area all full of lava, and the lava was actually draining back over top of the hole it was erupting from. So that made it interesting. But the high fountains are what dropped tephra for a long distance downwind here. And here where it piled up the thickest is where you still see the most sparse vegetation. Look closely, there is a little bit of always little grasses growing through there. But further downwind, there's actually quite a bit of revegetation and recovery occurring in a forest following this eruption. Right? It makes sense that the native plants here would be somewhat adapted to evolve and withstand eruptions to some degree, within limit, within reason. So that's the first release. Here's our second release. We'll go back to the top, May 1st. Updated eruption map and views of Kilauea Summit on Lay Day. So to start, we have the map that we showed you at the start, right? And it's interesting here. And purple is the extent of September 2023. Those are the cones sticking out a little bit over here. There's still a little bit left outside of the footprint, but you can see some comparison of that previous footprint of lava and what we currently have now. How we really have come up in our funnel, and that even though we have a wider flare out, we've thickened it and have added distance to the crater wall here, right? We've added more lava as we've filled it in. So some of these other images, there is a USGS maintaining the S2 camera. They note here, they checked on the S2 camera. It had been sending images intermittently over the past 24 hours and needed new batteries. So interesting to note there. There they are, replacing batteries today on the S2 camera, making sure we can see whatever maybe we can see. There is some of the precursory spatter before the overflow. This is the north vent here. That now lava is filled all the way up to here and spilling over the edge. But earlier it had this spatter, and that spatter was making this little cone inside of there. And scientists were using laser rangefinders to try to measure the height of that cone as well as the height of this cone. And so the answer is forthcoming, but also setting up cameras up on a rim. And you see all this brown stuff is a new tephra fallout from the fountains, right? So this is just trying to film the spatter here, and not a place for a camera to be once the higher fountains begin. This is in the impact zone, but looks like it's a temporary deployment there. And there they are, the photograph zooming into, once again, this little spatter cone within the north vent there. And here in a caption, I do note the small spatter cone was about 16 feet or 5 meters higher than the vent floor below it. That's this thing, 16 feet tall, 5 meters right there. While the rim of the north cone up here is measured as another 10 feet above the top of the inner spatter cone. So 16 feet inside of there, another 10 feet. So it's 25 feet deep inside of this cone, to give you some idea, right? 25 feet deep, 8 meters or so. And that brings us back to our live cam. And there's our dome fountain once again coming back up, filling the lake and getting ready to spill over again. I'm not sure if we've been keeping count how many of these has been happening, but there's the V2 camera once again as well. And we could show you the freshest views of these other cameras as well. There's V1 and V2 as we just showed you guys. The S2, not showing much there. V1 is looking into the sunset. So really, those are the best views that we have for you guys, is these live cameras here and here. So those are all of our observations. The last thing I have on the menu today is Volcano Watch, which is today, Ho'oma Kaukau means preparedness. And they are noting many things happening here as we wrap up April. One was the Merry Monarch Festival happening in Hilo. It wrapped up last weekend. One is Tsunami Awareness Month that also wrapped up here yesterday, and how these are connected here. So here's a view of the tsunami from April 1st, 1946. That was one of the largest tsunamis we've had, with fatalities here on Hawaii Island and Hilo in particular. So April 1st, that's why we use April as our Tsunami Awareness Month here in Hawaii. There are other Tsunami Awareness Months that are different months in different parts of the country and world because of their different histories as well there. But that 1946 event, there was also May 23rd, 1960, around April time, more or less. It came from a 9.5 Great Chilean earthquake. And so they note that after the 1960 destruction, as well as declining sugarcane plantations, with growing tourism, the Merry Monarch Festival was founded in 1963. It wasn't until 1971 that it shifted to hula, included a competition. Right? So it's got many other roles than just competition and boost to the economy. It's also a cultural celebration and revitalization. Storyteller, it's like a continuation of ancestral memory. All those things there as well, right? Observations that indicated warning signs of coming tsunami, for example. like the ocean receding, unusual silence, shifts in animal behavior. These were things that were observed by Hawaiian kupuna, observing nature closely. Ancestral knowledge, ike kupuna lives on and chants and dances. So all those stories that are being danced and told in the hulas revolve around natural events, whether they happen to be eruptions or earthquakes or tsunami or rainstorms or those kinds of things, right? So that's how that ties in here as well together. So one thing that we always want to reiterate and reinform is this threat of local tsunami. That those tsunamis in 46 and 1960 had hours of warning to Hilo. It was more of having an infrastructure in place and everyone believing what was going on and understanding what that actually meant. But when an earthquake occurs locally, like in 75, Kalapana magnitude 7.7 earthquake under the south flank that flooded Halape with a 20-foot wave, 6 meters high, and killed 2 people in that area. Reached Punalu'u Black Sand Beach less than a minute and a half after the earthquake struck. Those are the areas that it really takes education for us to know ahead of time. Okay, if you are in an area next to the water and you feel the ground shaking strongly enough that you might have trouble standing, that's a big enough earthquake close by enough that there could be a local tsunami, and fast enough that there may not be time for anyone to tell you to evacuate, to sound any siren, to put on a message on the radio or the internet. That's one, if you see it and you feel it and you're there and then you become the first responder, you evacuate yourself and tell everyone else you see on your way what's going on, if they should be evacuating as well. And you don't need to go forever, right? You just need to get those about 2 blocks inland is what I learned at the Tsunami Museum. That's about how far the impact of that wave really gets. So you really don't need to get super far inland, but do start working your way inland, even if it is at a moderately slow pace. Just get moving inland, and that can make all the difference. So that's the Volcano Watch this week. That kind of ties things together for us here. And with that, I'll pass it to you guys for any more questions, discussions, mahalos.
Yeah. We do have some questions lined up for you if you want to go ahead and hit those.
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, first question. This was asked before we even went live. So might have been covered, but Nathan asked my question for tonight is, what are the things that could kill this eruption? Will it take an earthquake at the right spot or something else likely to make a change?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nathan. I think, we can discuss and speculate a little bit, but we don't really have the ultimate answer. Certainly, I think one thing that is in play is the lack of earthquakes in the South Flank and perhaps lack of South Flank movement overall, right? That allows this equilibrium to be maintained. Otherwise, what you're getting is you have enough magma coming into the volcano to sustain what's happening with these episodic fountainings at a regular interval, more or less, and also to fill up any space made by the South Flank moving out of the way. Right? So the more the South Flank moves, the harder it is to keep the balance to fill both that need and keep that balance at the summit. So certainly one earthquake on the South Flank that resumes that motion and more steady opening could be something that changes things. But the other thing is what I mentioned just now, the magma supply. Magma supply itself has been somewhat steady and at least working its way through the system to where it's available to erupt at the surface, right? So that means that when we want to have an episode, there's magma available there for it to happen. It's built up enough pressure over time, enough gas content, all the things you need for that to happen. And if the magma supply were to go down, then you can start constricting those passageways and breaking down a system as it is now. So when it might start again, it might have to make a new crack to come out or do something a little differently, right? The longer the gap between events, the more the chance of things breaking down in the near surface as well. So those would be some of the factors to consider there. We don't have a conclusive answer for you here, but it's a good question, Nathan, and yeah, something to think about. How long might this last? Not forever is the answer. It's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
Could be a while still. Could be a while still, right? Pool on the Middle East Rift, right next to the South Flank. Subject to South Flank motion as well. It had 44 episodes of high fountaning over a course of 3 years. So that might be the long end of it, right? But I personally doubt we'll go quite that long. We'll see though. Right now, there's no signs of it changing very much. And I'm a little bit limited in the data we have. We did in the past pull some South Flank GPS data. Maybe we can pull some of that again here and compare it in the future, but it's a little difficult with not all USGS data being online and getting updated, and there's a lot of stuff getting broken on our website. It's not the easiest to use, which is why we compile things for you guys and present them to make them easier, so you don't have to go and dig through the website to find out what's going on. Miss some corner of it. All so right. A little bit of an extra ramble there at the end, but there's our best answer.
Good? All right. We got one from Dawn here, and this is one I've heard a lot about on Tracker. What's up with the flames from last night? That persistent flame that was going on inside the vent?
Yeah, we showed this link from the USGS, this hydrogen gas burning vent, and that's the best answer we have, is to point back to what the USGS has said there.
All right. Then Cindy, is there any list of micro quakes provided for the weekly update?
I think it might be possible if you're getting the earthquake catalog directly to get some of those events. I'm not sure how many get filtered out from the national database. It might. Well, the easiest way really is only the weekly map. That map is updated every day, so you can look at the map every day, and it picks it up every day. We're only showing it once a week, right? But it does update every day, so there's at least that.
All right. And we'll do one more here. I got from Norm. It says, how big across in the north vent at the top of the flat part? How big across is the north vent at the top of the flat part?
That's a great question as well. I think it's maybe changing a lot, right? From those previous estimates that we just gave you guys from that zoomed in view, I would guess it's maybe twice as wide as it was deep, something like that. So I would 60-ish feet, 20-ish meters, something like 20 yards, somewhere there. And we did have some previous updates where they did report that distance. And I want to say it was about that. And it is changing. It's changed a lot since then, of course. But that's ballpark, I would say.
Yeah, it gets you in there. All right. Well, cool. I think that does
we need one of these old school geologists from the pool area to walk down there and stand right here and take a gas sample from us, and then we can have a nice reference for how big everything is, right?
Right. Something for scale. That always makes it so much easier for these cams.
Looks like we have lava leaking from the south vent back here, maybe as well, coming out.
Yep. Very interesting. Well, we'll see when the tilt goes, finally gives out, and we get into the throes of the episode. Might be tonight, but we'll be watching and waiting.
Yeah, sounds good. So let's wrap it, huh?
Yeah, I think that does it.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll let you guys get back to the live stream here, watching these views or whatever else you may have to do in between. It's hard to watch it if it's going to take days potentially. But certainly you can sign up for our email newsletter and our email alerts, right? Well, we can email you when something does happen. You can go and take a peek then, right? whenever they announce the start of the episode officially, maybe the lava being more continuously emitting, and then if it's separated by some main fountain phase, then some fountain phase alert as well. And yeah, otherwise, we'll recap whatever happens between now and next week at our regular time on Thursday, 5 p.m. Hawaiian time. And until then, from our nonprofit Hawaiian Volcano Education Resilience Institute, or HVERI for short, we have backstage Lou Attore, our ASL interpreters. Mahalo as always to Dano and Carrie Kaufman, Mr. Dane DuPont, and I'm Philip Ong. Appreciate all of you guys watching us live here. Looks like we have upwards of 80 people watching us live, still an hour and a half in. Mahalo to you guys and to everyone catching us on the replay as well. Aloha everyone. We ho.